Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I get asked a lot about with my own clients, and that is how many reps should I do for certain movements or things of that nature, right? And so I have some notes on my phone, so forgive me if I'm staring at my phone for a little bit. It's because I'm trying to figure out what to say. Now, first thing we need to talk about with different rep ranges is isolation movements versus compound movements. And generally in isolation movements, because we're isolating a certain muscle group and there's not really many joints involved, there's not going to be a lot of stress that's put on the body. Those are going to lend themselves to being higher rep ranges. Also, because in isolation movements we are focusing on a good mind muscle connection, and that's harder to get when you decrease the reps, right? So that's why for things like bicep curls or leg extensions, hamstring curls, leg curls, they're generally going to be like 10 plus reps. That's not to say there isn't a benefit to training them 10 reps or less. It's just that very few people will probably benefit from training them in those lower rep ranges, right? So they're generally going to be in higher rep ranges. And so that's kind of that's where I'll leave isolation exercises. Um, Overall, you get a ton of benefit through training in a variety of rep ranges. So it shouldn't just be, okay, this movement is this rep range. It should be, okay, I need a variety of movements in a variety of rep ranges. Let's see what I already have and let me put in something that lends itself to being a bit higher reps, right? So if you're lacking a certain leg exercise and you don't really have anything for 15 plus reps, you could throw in something like hamstring curls or leg extensions to kind of cover that high rep area. Because like I said, once again, there's benefit to training in all types of rep ranges. From there, we'll kind of get to, that was covering isolation movements, right? And then now we'll go to compound lifts, and kind of I'll preface this with the same thing. There's benefit to training in a variety of rep ranges. So it's like, okay, how do we put certain movements into certain rep ranges, right? How do we figure out what movements fit rep ranges the best? And with this, we're really looking at two things. We're looking at load, and we're looking at the amount of stress the lift puts on the body. And so I will bring up an example of low bar squats versus a belt squat. A low bar squat is going to put much more stress on your body than a belt squat. One, the bar is on our back and it's actually loading us. So it's loading not just muscles, but it's loading a lot of our joints, and it's really just putting a lot of pressure on our body. Versus something like a belt squat, which is using a lot of the same musculature in our lower body, but it's being loaded at the hips through a belt. And so in turn, there's a lot less stress put on the body because we don't have a bar that's sitting on the top of our back. And so something like a low bar squat has more puts more stress on the body than a belt squat. So that generally lends itself to lower rep ranges because of the higher fatigue that it generates. And also, we're able to use more load. So once again, that's another factor that is complementary to the stress that's put on a body, right? On movements where we can use more load, it's going to put more stress on the body. So a movement like a low bar squat is definitely going to put a lot of stress on our body because one, we're going to be able to lift more in a low bar squat than a belt squat, like any day of the week. And then two, it's also going to put a lot more pressure on our body just because of how it's structurally loading our body. And then it's also going to load more stress on our body because we're able to use higher loads. Now you can use lower loads, but then the question is kind of why, especially when you have great variations like something like a high bar squat or a belt squat that put a lot less stress on your body even for the same load, right? So generally something like a low bar squat would be used for much less reps than a belt squat or a high bar. Now, not so much high bar. High bar is be seen pretty closely to a low bar squat, but generally people are like quite a bit stronger in low bar than they are for high bar. Of course, this depends on kind of the population you're talking about, because if you're talking about like weightlifters, well, a lot of those guys high bar squat way more than I can low bar squat. So that's, it gets a bit iffy there. But this is generally for like general population people. Uh, so right, once again, we need to look at this as like, okay, I want to train in a variety of rep ranges. Which movements fit where? And that's where something like, okay, low bar squat will kind of tackle my heavier loads on a lower body day. Something like a low bar squat or a deadlift, right? Those are both movements that put a lot of stress on the body. So these will be, I'll do a few sets here at a lower rep range, right? How do I fit in, which exercises fit in for like a moderate rep range, say around the 10 rep range, right? Something like 8 to 12 reps. That would be something like, okay, maybe potentially high bar squats, maybe belt squats. Belt squats would probably be pretty good there. Also leg press. Leg press would be great because it doesn't put that much load on your body, and it's mainly just loading your muscles, which is what we're looking for once we start to get into the higher rep ranges. Yeah, and that kind of covers a lot of it without getting into specific examples, which I guess I will do because we still have a little bit of time. We're at 6 minutes right now. I don't know if anyone's going to listen to all this all the way through, and I'll get into a conclusion very shortly. But let's shortly talk about something like upper body lifts, right? And so competition bench press would be probably one of the most demanding upper body exercises. So that would lead itself to lower reps, right? So what variations could we do that would put less stress on our body? Well, something like a dumbbell bench press, or like an incline dumbbell bench press, something like a machine chest press. Those would be good alternatives to train the bench press movement in a higher rep range that's not as structurally demanding as the standard barbell bench press. So that's just, I'll leave that there as an upper body example. We had the low bar squats for the lower body example, so we're kind of good there. So in conclusion, we should look at it as there's a benefit to training in a whole variety of rep ranges, and we should really try and have exercises no matter in what phase in training we are at. We should try to have exercises in almost every rep range that we can, because once again, like I said, there's benefit to training in every single rep range. It just comes down to figuring out what exercises fit where, right? And so on this lower end, we have things like low bar squats, conventional deadlifts, or sumo deadlifts, whatever you're doing. Just straight up deadlifts, and then bench press, and then as you go on, you get to things like belt squats, right? Romanian deadlifts, right? Excuse me. Yeah, and then you get to the higher rep ranges, you generally get more towards isolation exercises, just because that's where they tend to work best. Now, the one thing I'll say with isolation exercises is experiment with a variety of rep ranges, as we should always try to be doing, and then on the rep ranges where you get the most stimulus, right? So where you get the most pump, say if it's like bicep curls for sets of like 15, if that's where you really get the best pump and you really fatigue the quickest, then make most of your work be in that like 15 rep range, but still train outside of that, still go maybe to 10 or maybe 20 plus sometimes, right? Yeah, and that kind of covers the video. If you have any other questions, if you have any questions that you would like me to answer, any sort of fitness or nutrition related questions, send me a message or leave it as a comment on this video, and I will do my best to answer them. Yeah, we're all done. So have a good day, and leave a like, leave a comment. Like I said, let me know what you want me to talk about, and I'll talk about it. All right, thanks.